So real quick, I'll just go through SB 553 relating to broadband service infrastructure. I'm inclined to accept the amendments suggested by Hawaiian Telcom, KICO, and the DCCA. So we're gonna spread out the applicability of the grant program. That's basically what we're gonna do. And we're going to remove the prohibitions on the DBED's ability to regulate the program. 1366, which is support for business accelerator programs. I'm planning to move that bill. And also 1444, which is SBIR money, provided that the companies remain located in the state for 5 years. And there was no testimony in favor of SB 1063 relating to wireless communication, with the exception of the DLNR who said that it wasn't necessary. So I'm inclined to defer that. So why don't we start with SB 553. DCCA. Thank you. Pico.
I will stand on our testimony and I appreciate you accommodating our suggestions.
Thank you. Hawaiian Telcom.
Stand on our testimony.
Thank you. Charter.
On our written testimony.
Thank you. We also have late testimony from DBED.
We stand on our testimony provided comments. If you have any questions.
Thank you. That's all the testimony we received. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Okay, members' questions? Okay, moving on to SB 1366. HTDC.
Thank you, Chair. We stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you. We have the Hawaii Farm Bureau in support. Sultan Ventures in support. Accelerate UH in support. Hawaii Venture Capital Association in support. Susan Hughes in opposition. GBS Accelerator in support. Nicole Neitz in support. Mana Up. Elemental Accelerator. Maui Chamber of Commerce. And Neil Savajo, all in support. That's all the testimony we received. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Members' questions?
I do.
Senator Morgan.
Yes, if HTTC can come up and just answer a question in terms of the funding and what the funding is, how you're appropriating the funding should it come to you. Just a general overview on what your priorities are for the program.
Thank you for the question, Senator. So I think looking at our testimony, we had last year 5 accelerators, 5 applicants. They come to us with their request. We have a committee, internal committee that is considering their request and also considering how much funding we have. We look at things like how many companies they support, how these industries compare to the other accelerators, for example. And we ended up funding all 5 of the applicants in a manner that was, it wasn't the same amounts for each one, but each one had some funding, and it's determined by their request and also the match that they provide. Because one of our requirements is that for every HTDC dollar, we ask them to match with a private dollar or a federal dollar or some other source, so that we can ensure that we're getting good value. The state is getting good value for our money.
And are there requirements or the outcomes, performance reports there in terms of how they have evolved into sustainable industries and high tech for our state?
So the.
And where is that report?
Thank you. So the accelerators are, I mean, this is a fairly new program for HTDC. We've only been implementing for a few years now, but part of the condition of our award is a financial reward, and I'm happy to share information with you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm trying to understand how this money is different from HSDC Carl Fuchs money. Because at least with that money, these guys hit one out of the park, the state gets a windfall. With your money, we don't get any equity stake in these companies, and these are not nonprofits, they're for-profit accelerators, correct?
Right.
So why are we putting money into this program versus HSDC's program?
The accelerators were funded by the legislature a few years ago, because before the accelerators existed, there were a lot of companies here looking for capital, looking for opportunities to start, and there wasn't a lot of places to point them. You know, they can pitch the angels, which, if they're lucky enough to get the opportunity, they can take advantage. At the same time, HSDC was trying to put together venture capital funds, and they were struggling with deal flow. You know, number of companies available that are fundable. So the accelerators were born. The accelerators are nationally, you know, considered the best practice, but they're still young in terms of economic development sense. They've been only around for, I would say they've become popular in the last 5 years. The return on investment is challenging. It's companies, right now the accelerators are providing seed capital and mentorship with the hopes of recouping their investment through an exit, which is, you know, takes some time, takes a little bit of luck. I believe that, you know, if the state tried to do it ourselves, for example, instead of partnering with a private entity, it would be a lot more expensive. So, you know, we feel comfort in supporting the accelerators that have sort of organically, with the state's incentive, come to rise, and helping them continue providing support to, or providing opportunities for local startups.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I'm just seeing that they feed in two pots. They feed on this money from you, and then they feed on another pot of money from HSDC. Yours is money, I understand how it is.
Ours is operational, yeah. We're not in the investment side. We're actually contracting them to run an accelerator program to provide service and mentorship and come up with funding opportunity for the companies.
But still, I mean, I just think that the better bang for the buck for the state is to go and get an equity stake. We want to see them succeed, and when they do, we should get part of that action. With you, they succeed, they just say thank you, and they make whatever profits they're going to make off of the accelerator investments, correct?
I think if they were profitable, then perhaps this funding wouldn't be required. But you know, if we're relying on them to turn a profit in the short amount of time that they've been in existence, many of these accelerators either wouldn't be here or maybe close for business, frankly. But I think it's a good program. I mean, we see not only the ability to point startup companies as, you know, a new opportunity. We see an environment where there's a lot more companies around. There's a lot more pitch type events, more entrepreneurial spirit. These are all parts of what HTDC is trying to do. So I think that there's outside benefit beyond, you know, just operating an accelerator program.
I don't see Carl Fuchs here, but I imagine even with him, when we give him money to invest, he doesn't actually do the actual investment. He invests in a money manager that then invests. And I imagine, and I'm pretty sure, they take a cut of that as just operational costs. So to your point of this funding operational costs, we could still do that by giving HSDC instead of you 1.5 million last year or $750,000 this year, right? So it's not, I'm not quite understanding how you can say that this money goes for operations, HSDC money goes for investment. Because his investments actually go to provide a management service fee for the money manager, right?
Yeah, I would have to let HSDC comment on their program. I'm not familiar with the interest, I just know where our funds are. Well, we issue an RFP basically asking for accelerator, and we define what an accelerator is. And we say that those are the, we're looking for entities, knowing that there are entities here in Hawaii that qualify. And we're asking them to basically agree to provide service and also give us reports so that we can see how effective these programs are. And that's, you know, I can only comment on the HTC side.
Yeah, to that extent, if in fact you're coordinated with HSDC, could some of those funds be used for some of your programs or your grantees, so that it actually grows the industry and or businesses here, so that we have a real strong critical mass here of the kind of companies that we'd like to be promoting and supporting in the long run, and that these companies don't just go away once they learn their business here with your help.
So what would?
So can you get monies from SDC? I mean, how does that work, that you're coordinating with them? Some of the investments can be made to some of the companies that you're providing grants to, so that it can have legs and, you know, have a more sustainable future as industries here that we could support.
I think there's a couple programs that are being confused possibly. What Senator Wukai was talking about was HSDC's equity investment into the accelerators. And so that provides the accelerators funding that they can provide to companies that go through the accelerator. And HTDC in turn was appropriated by the legislature funding to support the accelerator's operation. So the money that HSDC is awarding is going to the companies that are participating in the accelerator program. So it's directly correlated.
So it's one and the same, and you're actually just providing support services then to these companies? How does that work if in fact HSDC is actually funding the accelerator?
When this initiative first took shape, it was called the Launch Akamai Venture. It was called LAVA a number of years back. It was a joint effort between HTDC and HSDC saying that accelerators were necessary here. At the time, the structure, the way the funding was structured is all the funding went through HSDC, and HSDC took that happily and started getting these accelerators going. Over time, HSDC, you know, again, I don't want to speak for HSDC, but they've described their mission as starting things, and these are tech accelerators, which definitely overlap with HTDC's activities. And so the legislature saw fit for the appropriation support for the accelerators to come through HTDC. And so we've been executing for the past 2 years.
Okay, stay right there, Len. We'll just move to the next measure, which is SB 1444, appropriating funds to HTDC to continue SBIR program.
Thank you, Chair. Chairs, we stand on our written testimony and support.
Okay, thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau, in support. Neurobehavioral Research Incorporated, in support. Aquabatics LLC, in support. Makai Ocean Engineering, in support. Hawaii Biotech Inc., in support. Experience Solutions, Maui Chamber of Commerce, Jim Wyban, and Brian Kays, all in support. That's all the testimony we've received. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify? Okay, members, questions? Senator Wakai?
Len, this bill has a clawback language. If the entity that receives the funds, for whatever reason, bails out of Hawaii. You think that's pretty good language that we should put in maybe all of our investments that we give to you?
Yeah, I think, we submitted comments that the additional 5-year requirement is fair, what we consider fair and consistent with our objectives. For the SBIR program, I haven't, particularly seen a lot of companies that are, receiving state grants and leaving. But I know in, recent years, because our SBIR program has gotten bigger, we've definitely got interest from companies who, I don't want to say are relocating here, but companies who are here peripherally wanting to become Hawaii companies. We've seen this in Kona, we've seen this in Maui. So I think this language is actually pretty smart looking forward, as our programs mature. So I support, we commented that we support this language.
Can you give me some direction as to some of the other grant programs you have that could use some of this, or could use this callback language?
HTDC has several grant programs, with the manufacturing, and I think in that one, there is language, if the company leaves the state, it already has in the rules that they'll be responsible for paying back the grant.
Could we put this in SBIR? Every grant program you use, to use taxpayer money to go help local companies, we want them to succeed, but if they fail, I don't think we should allow them to take all the money. We should be able to pull that money back and reinvest it in local companies that are gonna stick around.
For the ones that I said, I support, and
So
that's
you
part
have
of
like
it.
naval research
Yeah.
grant, you have like,
Sure.
all kinds of research and development tax credits, all of those things. If
The only
we-
consideration, and I would let the company speak on this side, is if they're taking outside investment, if that becomes a constraint. But, I think that the state's interest needs to be represented, so we're supportive of language. I think on the implementation side, that's another question, if this became an issue for HTDC to chase down, for example, that might be a question, but based on our experience, we don't anticipate that. So I think just being upfront with what the state's expectations for the state's investment is fair.
Yeah, 'cause I just see that we pour so much money, tax credits at companies, they grow to a certain extent, the VCs take them out of Hawaii, and all the jobs leave when they relocate someplace else. That's gotta stop, and we want them to succeed, but if they do succeed someplace else, give us back the money, give us back whatever tax credits you got while you enjoy them here in Hawaii, so we can go replenish the coffers to feed into a company that's actually gonna stay here and is committed to the state.
I agree. I would share, when a company leaves, for the most part, I don't think it's because they want to leave. It's usually they're constrained, and whether they can't find the funding or they can't find the customer, and that's why they're leaving. It's not like they're here being successful and, business is going so well, we're going to leave. So, that's some of the consideration in the clawback. It's talking about a company that's in a really bad situation when they're gonna leave, and then trying to recover money from them might be a difficult proposition. But, I think it's fair to put the state's expectations up front.
Okay, we're gonna move to the last item on the agenda, SB 1063. Our only testifier is DLNR. there anyone else who'd like to testify?
Hi. Chairs, my name is Christian Whitney, and I provided testimony, but I'm not sure why you don't have it. So let me just, I'd be happy to give it to you later today. But we're at Hawaiian Electric. We now serve as a broadband infrastructure provider, and in addition to other distributed energy and telecom equipment we already have. So we're concerned about this bill simply because we think there's some unanswered questions about what exactly counts as camouflage, how far the parameter has to be camouflaged, and other things related to what type of antennas we're talking about. So I posed some questions and some red line edits for the bill, and I'll be happy to give those to you.
Yeah, can you please provide it for the
Sure.
committee? So that we get the chance to review it.
Will do. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to testify? Okay, seeing none, questions? Okay, Senator Lopez?
I just find this bill kind of interesting because we're gonna camouflage the wireless devices in the jungles or in places where there's not gonna be a lot of sight. But we're okay with having these kind of ugly, big boxes right there on Barrington Street. If we're gonna do this, I mean, I don't know how you define camouflage, but shouldn't we make it so that it's aesthetically pleasing rather than just a whole bunch of boxes sitting on?
So that, I
street?
think that is actually some of the language I proposed, because I think, well, first of all, for Hawaiian Electric, we have our own set of policies that we're gonna go through when we are putting up equipment or allowing others to put up equipment. And the aesthetically pleasing concept is always at the forefront. So as much as we can, we try to encourage and do that on our own. Sometimes the equipment, for whatever reason, it could lose a warranty if something was attached to it, or a certain kind of paint was used, or there are reasons why some things may not be able to be camouflaged, so to speak. But in general, we already practice that, and what you're seeing is these big boxes that are gonna be popping up on the distribution poles. It is a requirement of the process that HECO has put together, that those things have to blend in. If the pole is brown, the box has to be brown. If it's a certain size and what they wanna attach is in someone's perfect living room ocean view, we're gonna require that they move it down or put it on the side, do whatever we can. So I know we're very concerned with it, but we are concerned with restricting language that just says camouflage, because that can mean the antenna on the pole has to be the antenna has to be camouflaged, does the pole have to be camouflaged, does the area around the pole? And so that can get into a whole bunch of different aspects. So we provided some questions to just try to get a better understanding of the intent of what they wanted as far as camouflage and antenna is concerned, because there's a variety of things that it could mean.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for DLR. Sam, it says pursuant to normal CDUP applications, all facilities are required to be camouflaged to blend into the surrounding environment. Is that can you explain that?
Yeah. I think this measure relates to conservation lands, so, we haven't had a great many, new telecommunication facilities developed in the conservation district, but, if that happens going forward, we're sort of required to consult with the community because of the potential floodplain impacts, or impacts on view sheds, and so, then we typically are gonna require the purveyor, whoever it is, AT&T, HECO, Sprint, any of those people to camouflage in some way. In some cases, that might mean making it look like a tree. In other cases, it might mean painting it a certain color scheme. We have a situation in Lanikai where somebody put up a tower that we authorized, and I think we asked them to camouflage it. Then we got a complaint from the community that it wasn't working, so we really got into it with, I forgot who it was. Now we've got them to put a rock around it. So it really blends into the hillside of Lanikai, and they agreed to do that, so.
So you already have the authority to do this?
Hmm?
You already have the authority. to do it.
Yeah, we,
Okay, okay, thank you. We'll recess for decision making.
Switcheroo on you, and welcome back to the Joint Committee on Economic Development, Energy, Tourism, and our good friends from the Technology Committee. We have three measures on this agenda. The first is Senate Bill 553 relating to, oh, sorry, no, wrong agenda. We're on the 250, yes, agenda. Take two. So we're on the 250 agenda. Senate Bill 994 relating to the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. And our testifiers list, we have Len Higashi from HTDC.
Stand on our testimonies.
Thank you, Len. Brian Miyamoto from the Farm Bureau. Submitted testimony support. Herman Kubler from Mackay Ocean Engineering has submitted testimony in support. Pat Sullivan, Oceanet, also in support. Ann Chung.
Stand on my written testimony in support.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 994? If not, members, any questions?
Chair, could Mr. Higashi come up? Can you distinguish the 1.5 million in this bill, SB 994, with the previous bill, SB 1444, that asks for 2.5 million a year for 2-year period? And what, are they for different things, or are they the same thing, or what's going
No.
on?
Thank you for the question. In our written testimony, we suggested this is for the same program. So we suggested that the bills be coordinated. And the governor's budget included $1 million for this program.
So if you were getting either the 1 million or the 2.5 million, what is it for, and how are you appropriating the grants in terms of small business innovation research?
So this is a phase 2, phase 3 matching grant program. So the companies that are able, so first of all, the SBIR program is the federal government's largest, they call it largest investment fund. It's the largest grant program available for small businesses who are doing, research and commercializing their research. They do it in 3 phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, each level getting larger and representing a more mature level of technology. The phase 2, phase 3 matching program has been around since FY16, and it was sought to help some of these companies who are doing research get their products out to market. So we've been doing this for 3 years now. In our testimony, we included our statistics. It was appropriated 2 million in FY16, 2 million in FY17, and 1 million in FY18, and we commented every year we get more applicants than we have funds for. So the same like all of our other programs, the applicants apply and describe their grant and describe how that meets the state's economic development objectives, and the committee scores them, awards the grants, makes the recommendation to our board, our board decides the amount and approves.
And just another question, you gave me a report targeted and emerging industries. Are those the priorities when you do your funding for this SBIR grants, that they are in fact going to emerging or hopefully base industries, and where are you putting your funds in terms of actual outcomes and return on investment?
Yeah, the SBIR, each of the federal agencies carves out 2% or a percentage of their base budget to direct towards supporting small business and innovation. So whether it's a Department of Defense who has needs of the warfighter, they put out areas where they would like small businesses to help them address. Hawaii, with its strong background in technology for Department of Defense, it's the largest funder of the SBIR program. A lot of our awards would be in that category. That's not saying that we are selecting that, but that's the awards that our Hawaii companies are winning. Hawaii companies also, they do from Department of Health, USDA. So it goes across the board, and really, we give priority to first-time applicants. We consider, what rural areas where they're from. All these things are factors for our committee to decide. What industry specifically their research is for is probably not the top on the scorecard. I think a lot of these are opportunity-based and projections. So if the company's application can explain how this has a high potential for creating jobs, how these jobs could happen in Hawaii, or how they could exist in Hawaii, and why their company has competence that gives them a strategic advantage over the rest of the country. I mean, those are the criteria that our committee is looking at.
So, not to belabor the point, but in terms of what I saw in the DBED report, the technology and also the kinds of industries that you're saying you're promoting and you're giving grants to have not really grown. In fact, it's nil to really a small percentage of growth. And I'm just wondering where your energies are being placed in terms of the grants of spawning a lot of, grants, but not really providing for long-term sustainable companies that could in fact provide the kind of industry, tech, alternative, I think it's alternative energy was one area, and healthcare, but these are areas that have been promoted, or at least base growth industries for Hawaii that we should be promoting in some fashion. And I'm wondering how your grants and grant application can do that, so you actually are growing an industry with jobs, the 80/80 mission that you have. So,
the SBIR program is one that I can probably speak the most about, because we've been doing since 1989. The reason why we've been so aggressively supporting it is the companies are bringing in $20 federal per state dollar, and the numbers, that's probably an underrepresented number, but $20 federal per state dollar. And if the companies weren't applying for these grants, some other company in another state would be getting it. So when we look at economic development and opportunities in Hawaii, these companies are doing the work of the state, and we couldn't do it without them. Us providing them some matching funds increases their probability for gaining future funds. And I feel strongly, like a lot of our program, I didn't mention this so much in the testimony, but a lot of our program is centered around the grant. But we not only provide the grant, we've been providing grant writing assistance, so help them to win the grants. We provide commercialization assistance after they win the grant, and we're trying to help these companies get product to market. I can't stress enough that it's a very difficult proposition, even across the federal SBIR. When I look at the success stories, there's a handful, but in those handful, there are Hawaii companies who have brought revenue and opportunity into the state. So
So,
we feel
so,
strongly about this program.
so the monies that we grant you to grant are primarily used as match to get federal grants to these companies, or these organizations that come before you? Is that, I mean, is that how your criteria for funding, with our grant money?
To be eligible, they have to win first. They have to win so the federal grant competition, it's very competitive. I mean, less than 30%, I wanna say, success rate. But if they are fortunate enough to win, we provide them matching funds up to 50%, so that they can either win further phases or secure additional funding.
So I guess my point is that you're giving the grants because you're matching for federal monies, or are you giving the grants because they're building part of this high-tech or tech and alternative energy, or new emerging base industries that we can develop right away? I guess what is the major criteria for granting? Is it just to match because they'll get federal money, or is it to give them funds so they grow our industry here for our jobs here?
Yeah, for the phase 2, phase 3 program, it's the last. We're trying to gain the jobs here. And we're trying to gain sustained industry here. We're trying to get products to market.
And so your report will say which industries have sustained growth. There are base industries here for Hawaii based on the amount of money that you have granted to them.
I'm not quite sure we're talking the same language. Like when we're talking about industries, these companies are applying to federal opportunity. So there's a we call it a BAA, a broad announcement, and they can answer the call. So it could be in renewable energy, it could be in Department of Defense, it could be in a lot of these different areas. These are different areas of need for our country, and our government is putting some money to support small business, to do research, recognizing that their investment into the companies will strengthen our country. That's the nexus of the program. So it's not one industry specific. It's every federal agency across our country. They have, I think it's total 32 departments, and each of these has their own problems, and they present opportunities.
So I guess, just for clarification, is HTDC primarily getting these monies to assist companies by giving them matching funds so that they can get funded? Or is HTDC developing a technology and providing for businesses, not necessarily industries, but businesses that will be sustained in Hawaii? A technology sector in Hawaii, and that's where the money is going to help them get federal monies, but also to be developing sector industry for Hawaii that's sustained into the future. I mean, what is your goal? Is it just to get the matching so they can help get federal money as small businesses? Or is it to create a real sector for technology and emerging industries?
For the phase 2, phase 3 program, the goal is the latter, is trying to get these companies with enough asset, intellectual property that they can sell. And to prescribe what industry that is, I think that's a challenging proposition.
Thank you, Jim.
So let me ask you a question. For SBIR phase 2 and phase 3, well, so for federal monies that are appropriated to companies who win the SBIR grant, okay, are there restrictions on what those companies can utilize that money, that federal money for?
That's correct.
So what are the restrictions?
They can only use a certain portion for travel, and
It's primarily for research and development, right?
Correct.
Exclusively.
Correct.
Okay, and so phase 2 and phase 3 companies,
Is to develop their
they're taking they've done the research and development based off of the money they've been awarded from the federal government. And then in phase 2 and in phase 3, they're trying to commercialize that research
That's what our
and
program is.
build a product, take the product to market, and build out the company, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so the money that the state provides those phase 2 and phase 3 companies, is that money is that money which is intended to help these businesses commercialize? Is that money that they would have otherwise been able to secure from the federal government?
No, they,
Right.
they don't have.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Can you tell us, out of all the years you've been funding this SBIR program, has there been any local company that actually sold a thing, like commercialized anything?
So, I should have included in our testimony, I mentioned the federal SBIR program has a handful of success stories. But Mackay Ocean Engineering is one of their success stories with, I think it was a $28 million phase 3, they call it phase 3 award, taking their PipeLink software and selling it, using it for commercial purposes, but also selling it to the federal government. That's one example. There's a handful of others and not as well publicized as that one, but that one is nice because the SBIR website actually contains it. So it happens, it's challenging, but it's where we're trying to get to is the sustained revenue for the companies that can provide the jobs for the state.
Because I think Senator Moriwaki was trying to get at, when do we move into commercialization and actually build more jobs? Because it seems like all of these dollars are just going to research, which obviously is important to get product to commercialization, but at a certain point, we gotta start creating jobs here and stop, continue to just, at a certain point, if you're researching, maybe you're never gonna get figured out.
Right.
So we should cut bait at a certain point and have them get their own venture capital on their own, entirely on their own, and shift our monies to the next newest company that might actually commercialize something in a reasonable period of time.
That's a policy decision. We provide, what we've been trying is, all these commercialization assistance program. So I mentioned this before, but we don't just provide the grants. We provide the grants and we've been trying to provide additional assistance that we think is necessary for the companies to get to the, end goal. The commercialization assistance program, we bring in a company called Dawnbreaker, which that's who the federal SBIR program is prescribing. We also have a partner with, they're called RTA. They do this market intelligence. These are new things that we've tried since the inception of the phase 2 program, since FY16. So it's the companies will, I think, always identify money as one of the needs, and it's no doubt that that's true. On the state side, we are trying to couple the money with the program and bring the expertise needed to get these ventures past the research stage into the product stage.
Members, any further questions? Okay, thank you, Len. We're gonna move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 995, Len Higashi from HTDC.
Thank you. Should just stand. Thank you. We stand in our testimony in support.
Thank you, Len. Brian Miyamoto from the Farm Bureau has submitted testimony in support. Herman Kugler has also submitted testimony in support from Mackay. Dr. Pat Sullivan, Ocean, also in support. And Chung?
Again, stand on my testimony in support.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on 995? Members, questions? We're gonna move on to the last bill on this agenda. That is Senate Bill 272 relating to solar energy devices. We have Lynn McCrory, who has submitted testimony in support, and William Geis from the Hawaii Solar Energy Association has submitted comments, and there's his comments. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 272? Members, if there's no need to ask questions of, so we will break briefly prior to taking the vote.
decision-making, we'll start with the 245 agenda, which is technology/EAT. I'm gonna read with your indulgence, I'm gonna read the amendments because there are a number of them. This is to SB 553. We're going to amend section 1, page 3, lines 8 to 15, and we're gonna incorporate the definition for broadband access or broadband service and broadband infrastructure from from currently existing law, HRS 440J-1, so that we don't have multiple broadband definitions. Section 3, page 5, we're gonna strike lines 3 to 5, which prohibit an applicant from upgrading existing infrastructure in an underserved area, so that DBED can make the determination which proposal best provides access in rural areas. Section 4, subsection 1, page 5, we're gonna strike the lines 13 to 15, prohibiting entities that receive other state or federal monies from applying, so that, again, DBED has the flexibility to figure out what proposals are the best for the rural communities. Section 4, subsection 2, page 5, we're gonna raise the minimum participation amount to 50%. Page 6, section 4, subsection 3, we're gonna add in the HECO suggested amendments. We're gonna add a subsection 4, and we're gonna amend subsection 3 to allow NGOs with demonstrated experience in broadband infrastructure to participate and also to partner in the program. In the application criteria, section 6, we're gonna eliminate the length of time, section D3, and we're gonna eliminate section 6E. DBED doesn't have regulatory authority already. We're also gonna strike section 8 too, section 8, subsection 2, and push the effective date to January 1, 2020. Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none, SD1, chair votes aye.
English excuse, Senator English excused, self, aye, Senator Wakai, Chair
Yes.
Wakai, and Senator Favela excused. 3 votes adopted.
Thank you.
For Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism, same recommendation and discussion. If not, Senator, you might continue.
Chair's recommendation on SB 553 for the Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism is to pass with amendments. Chair Wakai.
Yes.
Vice Chair Taniguchi is excused. Vice Chair temporary. I go aye. Senator Kyoho Kaloli.
Aye.
And Senator Favela is excused. Measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next measure is Senate Bill 1366. The recommendation is to pass this measure as is. Any discussion? Okay, chair votes aye.
Okay, Senator English excused, myself, aye, Joe Kai,
Yes.
and Senator Favela excused.
For EET, same recommendation, to pass this measure as is.
SB 1366, Chair's recommendation is to pass unamended. Chair Wakai.
Yes.
Vice Chair Taniguchi is excused. Inoue votes aye. Senator Kyoho Kaloli.
Aye.
Okay, Senator Favela is excused. Measure is adopted, Mr. Chair.
Next measure, SB 1444. We're gonna